So historically, have we in the past, in fact, used deferral and nearly swept the rainy day fund in order to meet the needs that have been out there? For instance, in 2003.
It's exactly what you did in 2003. You did the deferral and you swept the rainy day fund.
And so instead of the rainy day fund built back up to some extent, but I think in 2005 we chose just to kick it down the road again, and then even it up in 2007.
Well, you spent the rainy day fund in 2005, I believe, on one of the two economic development programs.
So historically there has been that time. Let me just sort of bounce this off you. In light of some of the uncertainties that we think may be out there come 2013, the health care reform bill, which is an enormous fiscal burden, for which I don't think we can get any amount of rainy day fund to prepare for that. But knowing that there could be some enormous financial challenges to us come 2014 for sure, would that change your mind in terms of being a little bit more on the conservative side in terms of holding that rainy day back and maybe having to kick it down the road again, but also having that $2 billion plus available to use for unforeseen circumstances?
Let me answer it this way, Dr. Zoroas. And by the way, let me personally say I tremendously respect the work that you did on Article 2. I think that you pulled a very, very large rabbit out of a very small hat on that. So
lots of good help, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Got it.
But anyway, this sort of gets to the issue of target revenue and regular program allotments and what it is that you're cutting. I mean, that's intimately related with the question that you're asking me. The purpose of the foundation school program formulas are to provide for the funding of a basic accredited education program. That's what the basic allotment was always supposed to represent. That's what the formulas applied to them, the weights and adjustments applied to them are supposed to represent the degree to which those vary depending on who your kids are, what your market is, what your diseconomies of scale are. And what target revenue is it's one of a batch of hold harmlesses that we have in the statute, and it's not the only hold harmless that we have in the statute. Chairman Eisler, you made a comment the other day that the reason that we couldn't cut target revenue was because a promise was made in 2006. I would argue that
That was your testimony, too.
No, that wasn't my testimony. We had discussion. What my testimony was we had a promise to not cut the formula funding for public education. When we compressed the tax rates down by a third, in order to not cut formula funding for public education, the multiplicative inverse of that is you had to increase the yields by 3/2, 50%. And we didn't do that, and that's why we adopted target revenue. But that's not the only thing that we did in target revenue. In target revenue also, we first of all froze into place all of the old inequities that were primarily wealth-related that were there. And by the way, those are still statutorily there, and if you eliminate target revenue hold harmless, they will suddenly spring back to life again. So you might want to take a look at addressing that particular issue.
We also took the 1-year lag out and built that in, which is about $1 billion a year.
Yeah, basically what you did was we used to have that lag in terms of property values. It was sort of an interest-free loan from the state to the school districts as long as property values were going up at least the percentage of increase from the prior year, okay? And every school district got that loan, and if they were prudent in their budgeting, they said, I'm going to use that right now to help me with my cash flow and some other stuff, but I realize that the state's going to catch up and take it away next time around.
Which is why the tax rates went to $1.50.
No,
they got pushed based on the lag and increase.
The biennium lag is a different issue, and that's why they went to $1.50. But that's a different issue from this. No, they were at $1.50 before we did target revenue. Target revenue. Yes. What happened with target revenue is that 1-year jump in property values, and for most districts, because they had the pick of 3 different ways of coming up with what their base funding was for target revenue. It was going to be the 2005-6, 2006-7 under old law, or 2006-7 under new law. You get to pick the best one, and depending on how you did that and what your property value growth was from one year to the other, what was a one-time only thing that districts always expected the state would catch up for them the next time around is the gift that keeps on giving. And they've been getting it again and again and again and again. And the districts that entered into agreements with Chapter 41 districts to sell WADA, knowing that was a one-year agreement, have been getting the money for that again and again and again and again, and so on. You have all of these things that were one-time things that are permanently frozen right now into that target revenue. And what's happening, to get back to the question that was asked here, is you are choosing right now to say it is more important that we protect the money for those one-time only things that we froze in place, and because of that, we have to cut money from people at the bottom. And my answer to the question that was asked is, if that's your decision, then yes, you ought to go to the rainy day fund. The alternative to that is to take the money out of those excess funds that are in target revenue and use that to not make cuts at the bottom. But to make the cuts at the bottom and to leave the money in the bank, no, that's not right.
Okay. John.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said that I don't think we can throw every target revenue district in the same boat. I have a little district that is K through 8 that is frozen at compared to a lot of districts, is frozen very high, at just slightly above $7,000. 159 students, K through 8. The superintendent is the principal and a bus driver. If you lose one teacher out of this district, you've lost a grade level. Okay? So I'm aware of nothing that they're frozen into other than target revenue when we put that in effect. Okay?
I'd have to look at the numbers for the district to see what their property value changes.
My point is, your comments made me think you think every target revenue school out there is locked in with something other than what would happen to them in 2006. They're also a Chapter 41 solely because of mineral interest. All right? So anything they do to raise their local rate, they're going to send most of it back to the state of Texas.
I'd be glad to sit down with you and go over the numbers for that particular district, but I do not intend to imply that all of target revenue is only excess money going to districts, because we have not yet, to my mind, raised the formula level up to where it needs to be to make up for that one-third compression in tax rates. What I'm saying is that some of it is the fact that we haven't raised formula level high enough, and what we ought to be doing is taking the excess money from those one-time only things that we keep giving back and back and back, and using that to raise the formula levels up.
All right. So you're saying there's one-time level things, one-time hold harmless things in there even before we went to target revenue.
There were hold harmless. There was a hold harmless provision that was put into law in 1993 after I left the legislature. That was put into law with a specific limitation that it was going to expire after, I believe, 3 years. When the Supreme Court ruled that the system was constitutional, they said it's okay with those inequities in there because that provision is going to go away. And as soon as the Supreme Court said it was going to go away, then the legislature not only repealed the provision that said that those things were going to go away and left them in law, but then added a second provision that gave them a compound interest multiplier, so they get more money every time you raise formulas than everybody else does.
What's your feeling about what we have done? I know since I've been in the legislature with allotments, we seem to establish a program with an allotment that I assume is money that's outside the basic formula, or does it become a part of the formula? Like the high school allotment.
I think the high school allotment was a number that was pulled out of the air and stuffed in there because somebody wanted to achieve a particular political purpose.
That was supposed to be $500, and then $225 went to equity to go from 92 to 95% equity in that session.
There was nothing that had indicated a need for it. And the interesting thing about the high school allotment, just to use that as an example, the explanation that was given for it on the floor literally was, we needed to do the high school allotment because of the dropout rate. We needed to give districts the money to be able to deal with dropouts.
I thought it also had something to do with math and science. I seem to recall.
There was some discussion of math and science, but
4x4 for science.
The 4x4 was also there too, but there was an awful lot of talk about it was necessary to deal with dropouts, and actually the districts with the highest dropout problems get less money by doing it through the high school allotment than any other type of district. And I can walk you through the regressive nature of that, either on a wealth basis or on a disadvantaged students basis, or however you want to look at it. But it's regressive however you look at it.
But your K-8 got done.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, your K-8 person got stiffed on it, so they would have been much better off if it was just flowed through the formula.
But Texoma will get it anyway.
Other questions?
Anything else? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members. Sylvester.